Right now on Upfront.
Battle for Wisconsin.
I'll be there regardless. I hope everybody who's eligible comes.
Countdown to the first Republican presidential primary debate in Milwaukee, and the group No Labels now just hours away from a big event.
Are you ruling out a third-party bid?
Well, I've never ruled out anything or ruled in anything.
The potential to upend the election with a third-party candidate. The group's national director, former Congressman Joe Cunningham, is here as they work to get on the ballot in key battlegrounds like Wisconsin. And Charles Franklin on what it could all mean here.
Then the grassroots efforts. Major work already underway ahead of 2024.
But I'm standing here today, ready to jump back in, ready to keep going.
Now, former Democratic U.S. Senate candidate and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is helping lead those efforts, and he's here.
And the fight over DEI.
They are not our friends, and they are our enemies.
Republicans working to defund from Wisconsin to Washington, now a growing divide. Tim Sheehy, president of the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce, on the efforts in Wisconsin.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Another big weekend in Iowa for the Republican candidates for president, with all roads leading to Wisconsin. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis here this past week for a pair of private fundraisers with Wisconsin GOP donors. This as growing attention now focuses on the group No Labels, which is considering launching a third-party ticket, a move that could upend the race for president. No Labels is launching a major event tomorrow night in New Hampshire featuring Democratic Senator Joe Manchin and former Republican Governor Jon Huntsman, increasing speculation about a possible bipartisan ticket. Now, our recent conversation with No Labels national director, former Democratic Congressman Joe Cunningham.
Let's talk about this potential unity ticket. Is the only scenario that No Labels would run a third-party candidate is if it's a Trump-Biden rematch?
There's two scenarios, Matt. First scenario being we have to have a pathway to victory. We're not interested in running this ticket to finish second. So there must be a pathway of victory. So there has to be an opening. That leads to the second factor, which the American public must be so dissatisfied with the two main options presented that they want an alternative. And that's what we're seeing right now with Trump v. Biden. I mean, this is a sequel nobody wanted to watch. And polls are coming out every single day saying the majority of Americans don't like these choices. And America deserves choices and options. And so that's why we're working to secure ballot access in 50 states and Washington, D.C. to give Americans that choice.
So as we sit now, would Trump-Biden be the only scenario at this point?
Well, I'd say it's most likely, but I can't rule anything out because, there's a variety of things that can happen. But at the end of the day, we're going to look to the American public and see if they're so dissatisfied with the two major nominees that there's an opening.
You talked about working on ballot access right now. What is that effort looking like here in Wisconsin? What's the biggest challenge?
Well, look, we're on a handful of states right now. Our goal is to be, on probably a little bit less than half the states by the end of the year. This is a long process, a tedious process, but we're proud of the accomplishments we've been making. And I think it's indicative of the fact that Americans are craving choices and craving an alternative to this Biden v. Trump rematch that is being set up right now.
Right now, you are facing legal challenges in a number of states and jurisdictions. How detrimental is that, and what's the impact on that and the overall goal here?
Overall goal is secure ballot access in 50 states plus Washington, D.C., and I'm very confident we're going to make that happen. We have an incredible team. We have a great message. And the fact is, this is about democracy.
Joe, you know better than all of us that this isn't without some pushback, these efforts. Illinois Congressman Brad Schneider told The Times recently, "I can think of nothing worse than another Trump presidency and no better way of helping him than running a third-party candidate." I mean, is this a threat to Democrats?
Absolutely not. And look, Brad is a friend of mine. I work with Brad in Congress and have a lot of respect for Brad. And, the fact is, I'm not sure Congressman Schneider has all the details. Be happy to bring him up to speed as to the dynamics of this, because the data behind this shows that this won't be a spoiler. The data behind this and the modeling and the polling shows that this is a ticket that would garner support among a large amount of independents. And this is a ticket that would pull equally from Democrats and Republicans, and it's a ticket that could win outright in the Electoral College. We have data providing that support. And quite frankly, I mean, with all due respect to Brad, one of the reasons I jumped into this is because looking at the polls, I'm concerned that Biden cannot defeat Trump. I think Americans have to realize or face the fact we're in different times right now. And, everyone is scratching their head looking at these two presumptive nominees thinking to themselves, is this the best we got? We're 4 years later and we're back to square one with the same exact two people. You look at majority of Americans, majority of Democrats and Republicans, they're craving something different. And that's what we're trying to provide access to.
Joe, are you focused big picture at this point, or are you looking to key states like Wisconsin, for example, where results are razor thin within 1 percentage point? A third-party ticket will definitely bring an interesting factor into that. But what is your perspective as you look at the electoral map?
Yeah. Again, when we look at the electoral map, the numbers show a clear pathway to victory. 59% of Americans, according to our numbers, would be open to a moderate unity ticket. All right. And we don't even need 2/3 of those to show up to vote. So this pathway is there. It exists. Should things change or shift in the next several months, 6 or 8 months, we can reassess this. But we're not running to spoil, and we're not running unless there's a clear pathway.
A fascinating conversation that we will continue to follow. Joe Cunningham, National Director of No Labels. Joe, thanks so much for your time and perspective.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jaron.
So let's bring in Charles Franklin now, Director of the Marquette Law School poll. Charles, thanks for being here. When you're talking about voter opinions, how strong is the discontent of a possible Trump-Biden rematch, and what does the third party look like nationally and here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, there's a lot of discontent with both of them having a rerun of the 2020 election. That's a little bit more for Biden among Democrats, where a majority say they wish he weren't running. With Trump, it's about 60% saying they are glad he's running. So there is a little difference there. But just because Democrats say they don't want Biden to run doesn't mean they've turned against Biden. His favorability among Democrats is actually higher than Trump's is among Republicans. So I think that it's a mixed picture. There's some pining away for new candidates in both parties, and especially in the Democrats. But we haven't seen other candidates in the Democratic Party, senators and governors, getting in that race. So I think that's not likely to turn into real discontent among Democrats as we get further in the process.
So some are saying that if No Labels actually runs a third-party ticket this cycle, that it would hurt Biden and help Trump. Is that fair?
Well, theoretically, it certainly can. In 4 of the last 6 presidential races here in Wisconsin, the race has been decided by less than 1 percentage point, and the independent or third-party vote has been greater than that margin in each case. So theoretically, you can look at that and say, wow, all 4 of those races could have tipped the other way if the third-party vote had gone overwhelmingly for the candidate who was behind. Now, as a practical matter, really the 2000 race is the only one where the trailing candidate could have won with just as little as 52% of the independent vote. On the other hand, neither party wants to see any voters come to the polls and not make up their mind between one of the 2 party candidates. And so for that purpose, both parties are going to worry about any effect that third parties could have drawing off votes.
Charles, always great to have your insight and analysis. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Up next, grassroots efforts already underway to mobilize voters ahead of 2024. Former Democratic U.S. Senate candidate and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes now leading some of those efforts. He's standing by with Matt next.